The evacuation should have been over. Everyone from Deep Horizon had been rescued, the Void Swarm was contained, and the GFS Harmony was preparing to jump to hyperspace. But as Sergeant Kim Da-yoon helped the last refugee into the ship's medical bay, alarms began screaming throughout the station's wreckage. "Captain," Engineer Choi Woo-jin called from his station, his voice tight with concern. "Something's wrong with Deep Horizon's power core. The containment field is destabilizing." Captain Lee Tae-min rushed to the engineering display. The numbers there made his blood run cold. "How long until core breach?" "At current decay rate, maybe 6 minutes." Dr. Park So-jin looked up from where she was tending to the evacuated researchers. "Sir, a core breach at this distance will destroy everything within 50 kilometers. That includes us, Commander Krextor's destroyer, and any rescue ships coming to help." Taemin activated the ship-wide communication system. "This is the captain. All hands, prepare for emergency hyperspace jump. We're leaving the area immediately." "Sir," came Da-eun's voice from the medical bay, "we can't jump yet. 3 of the evacuees are in critical condition. A hyperspace jump could kill them." The captain closed his eyes. They were trapped between 2 impossible choices: stay and die in the core explosion, or jump to safety and lose 3 people they had just risked everything to save. "There might be another option," Choi said quietly. "Someone could go back to the station and manually stabilize the containment field." "That's suicide," So-jin stated. "The radiation levels around that core are already lethal. Anyone who gets close enough to fix it will die from exposure within minutes." "Maybe not," Da-eun said, walking onto the bridge. "The station's medical bay has emergency stasis pods. If someone could reach the core, stabilize it, and then get to a stasis pod, they might survive long enough for us to extract them." Taemin looked at his sergeant. "Da-eun, no. You've already risked enough today." "Sir, with respect, this isn't about risk anymore. This is about what's right." She moved to the tactical display, studying the station's layout. "I know that station better than anyone now. I can get to the core faster than anyone else." Commander Krextor's voice crackled over the communication system. "Captain Lee, what is your status? My sensors show the station's core is destabilizing." "Commander, we have injured people who can't survive a hyperspace jump." "We need more time." "Then we all die here, Captain. There is no other option." Da-eun looked at her captain. "There's always another option, sir. Humans make other options." Before anyone could stop her, she was already heading for the airlock. "Sergeant, that's an order. Stand down." Da-eun paused at the airlock door. "Sir, sometimes the right thing to do is the impossible thing to do. That's what makes us human." She sealed the airlock behind her and launched herself back toward the dying station. Aboard the bridge of the Harmony, Taemin watched his sergeant disappear into the wreckage of Deep Horizon. "Choi, monitor her life signs. So-jin, prepare the medical bay for emergency radiation treatment. If she pulls this off, she's going to need everything we've got." "If she pulls this off," So-jin said quietly, "she'll have done something that violates half the laws of physics. Then it's a good thing Da-eun never was very good at following rules." Inside Deep Horizon, Da-eun moved through corridors filled with deadly radiation and the smell of melting metal. The station was dying, its systems failing one by one as the core breach approached. But she had spent her life in places that were falling apart. This was just another day at the office. The route to the core required her to pass through sections of the station where the Void Swarm had eaten through the shielding. Radiation levels there were already high enough to kill most species within hours. But Da-eun had modified her environmental suit during the evacuation, using spare parts from the station's emergency supplies. "Da-eun, this is Captain Lee. What's your status?" "I'm in the primary engineering section. Radiation levels are significant, but my suit is holding up. I can see the core chamber." What she could see was terrifying. The containment field around the fusion core was flickering like a dying light bulb. Each flicker sent waves of radiation through the station that would have killed anyone not protected by heavy shielding. "The containment field generators are offline," she reported. "I need to restart them manually." "Da-eun, the manual controls are inside the radiation field. No one can survive that level of exposure." "Sir, I didn't come this far to give up now." She entered the core chamber and immediately felt her suit's radiation detectors begin screaming warnings. The levels here were beyond anything her equipment was designed to handle. But Da-Un had grown up learning to ignore warnings when people's lives were at stake. The manual controls for the containment field were located next to the fusion core itself. To reach them, she had to walk directly through the radiation field that was leaking from the failing containment system. Each step toward the controls felt like walking through fire. Her suit's systems began failing one by one as the radiation overwhelmed them, but she kept walking. Radiation exposure approaching lethal levels, her suit's computer announced in a calm voice that seemed inappropriate for the circumstances. "Yeah, I noticed," Da-Un replied, reaching the control panel. The controls were damaged, their displays flickered, and half the buttons didn't respond. This wasn't a job for an engineer. This was a job for someone who understood that technology sometimes had to be convinced to work rather than ordered. Da-Un began the delicate process of manually restarting the containment field generators. Each step had to be perfect. One mistake would cause an immediate core breach that would vaporize everything within 100 kilometers. "Containment field at 15%, she reported. "Da-Un, you need to get out of there. Your radiation exposure is already beyond what most people can survive." "Not finished yet, sir. Containment field at 40%. Her hands were shaking now, whether from radiation sickness or adrenaline she couldn't tell. The suit's medical systems were pumping her full of anti-radiation drugs, but they could only do so much. "Containment field at 70%. "Da-Un, that should be enough to prevent immediate breach. Get to a stasis pod now." "Almost there, sir. Containment field at 90%. She completed the restart sequence and watched the containment field stabilize around the fusion core. The immediate danger was over. Deep Horizon would not explode and take everyone with it, but Da-Un's suit was reading radiation levels in her body that should have killed her already. She began the journey to the medical bay and its emergency stasis pods, but her legs weren't working properly anymore. The radiation had damaged her nervous system, and her vision was beginning to blur. Can't make it to the medical bay," she reported, her voice weak. "Da-Un, you have to try. The stasis pod is your only chance." "Sir, I need to tell you something, in case I don't make it." "You're going to make it, Sergeant." "That's an order." Da-Un smiled inside her helmet. "Yes, sir, but just in case." "Tell my family that I was exactly where I was supposed to be, doing exactly what I was supposed to do." She collapsed in a corridor 50 meters from the medical bay. Aboard the Harmony, the bridge crew watched her life signs fade. "She's gone into cardiac arrest," Sojin reported, her voice breaking. "Her body can't handle the radiation damage." Taemin stared at the display showing his sergeant's position. 50 meters from safety. 50 meters from the stasis pod that could have saved her life. "Captain," Choi said quietly, "her sacrifice saved everyone. The core is stable. We can evacuate the area safely now." But Taemin wasn't accepting that his sergeant was dead. "Choi, can you get a transporter lock on her position?" "Sir, our transporter isn't designed for that kind of precision work, especially through all that radiation. I didn't ask if it was designed for it. I asked if you could do it." Choi looked at his captain, understanding what was being asked. "It would require manually adjusting the transporter systems in ways that could damage them permanently, and the radiation might disrupt the signal." "Do it." "Sir, even if we get her aboard, she's absorbed enough radiation to kill her 3 times over. Then we'll figure out how to bring her back from the dead. That's what humans do." What followed was a masterclass in human stubbornness. Engineer Choi jury-rigged the transporter system to work beyond its design specifications. Dr. Sojin prepared treatments for radiation poisoning that no medical textbook said should work. Captain Taemin coordinated an effort to save one person that required resources that logic said should be used to save the many. When they beamed Da-Un aboard the Harmony, her heart had been stopped for 4 minutes. Her body was shutting down from radiation damage. By any reasonable medical standard, she was dead. But humans, as the aliens were learning, had their own standards about what was reasonable. Sojin worked for 6 hours straight, using techniques that combined human medical knowledge with alien technology in ways that neither species had attempted before. She filtered Dayun's blood through improvised systems that removed radioactive particles. She used alien regeneration technology to repair damaged organs. She refused to accept that someone who had just saved hundreds of lives should die because of radiation exposure. When Sergeant Kim Da-eun opened her eyes 12 hours later, she was looking at the face of Sergeant Kim Da-eun moved through the maintenance tunnels of Deep Horizon like a shadow. The research station was dying around her. Emergency lights flickered as the void swarm consumed power conduits. The air recycling system coughed and wheezed as creatures ate through the metal ducting. But Da-eun had grown up in the underground bunkers of Seoul during the resource wars. Tight spaces, failing systems, and the constant threat of death were nothing new to her. What was new was having to rescue 16 people while creatures that ate metal and energy hunted her through the corridors. Da-eun, this is Captain Lee. What's your status? She whispered into her communicator, knowing that sound might attract the creatures. I'm in maintenance level 7. The swarm has broken through the outer hull in 3 places, but they seem to be following the main corridors. The maintenance tunnels are still clear. Good. Dr. Kelthara says the trapped researchers are in Laboratory Complex 12. Da-eun checked her map display. Laboratory Complex 12 was on the other side of the station, through areas that were definitely not clear of swarm creatures. Understood? Captain, I'll find a way. What she didn't say was that finding a way might be impossible by normal standards. The direct route was blocked by hundreds of void swarm creatures. The alternate routes led through sections where the hull had been breached, meaning no atmosphere and no protection from the creatures that could survive in open space. But Da-eun had stopped thinking in terms of normal standards the moment she left the Harmony. She studied the station schematics on her portable display, looking for something the station designers had never intended anyone to use. There, the emergency plasma conduits. They ran throughout the station to provide power to critical systems during disasters. They were too small for most alien species to crawl through, but Da-eun was human-sized. More importantly, they were full of superheated plasma that even the void swarm couldn't consume without dying. Captain, I'm going to lose communication for about 20 minutes. I'm taking the scenic route. Before Taemin could ask what that meant, Da-eun had already opened the access panel to the plasma conduit system. The conduits were never meant to carry people. They were lined with emergency shielding to contain the plasma, but that shielding wasn't designed to protect someone crawling through them. Da-eun modified her environmental suit's radiation protection and began the most dangerous crawl of her life. Behind her, she could hear the void swarm creatures discovering that someone had been in the maintenance tunnels. They began following her scent, but stopped when they reached the plasma conduits. Even creatures that adapted quickly knew better than to follow prey into a river of contained fire. 23 minutes later, Da-eun emerged from the conduit system in the lower research levels. Her radiation detectors were screaming warnings, and her suit's environmental systems were working at maximum capacity to keep her alive. But she was here, and the trapped researchers were 3 corridors away. Captain, this is Da-eun. I've reached the research levels. Thank the stars. We were starting to worry. What took so long? Just sightseeing, sir. I can see the laboratory complex, but there's a problem. The problem was that void swarm creatures had broken through the hull directly above the laboratory complex. They were feeding on the station's superstructure, and in doing so, they had effectively caged the 16 researchers in a metal and ceramic prison. Da-eun could see the researchers through the laboratory's reinforced windows. They came from 4 different alien species, huddled together in the center of the room as creatures that looked like living nightmares moved around outside their shelter. Dr. Yilnes, the station's xenobiologist, spotted Da-eun first. The insect-like, alien's compound eyes went wide with surprise. There's someone out there, she clicked to the others. A human in an environmental suit. Da-eun activated her suit's external communication system. Dr. Yilnes, this is Sergeant Kim Da-eun from the GFS Harmony. I'm here to get you out. Sergeant, that's impossible. The corridors are full of swarm creatures. You can't have gotten through them. I didn't go through them. I went around them. Da-eun was already studying the laboratory structure, looking for weaknesses she could exploit. How many people are in there? 16 researchers and 2 station technicians. Dayun looked at the swarm creatures moving outside the laboratory. They were feeding on the station's hull, growing larger as they consumed the metal. Soon they would be too big to fit through the corridors, but they would also be strong enough to break through the laboratory's walls. "We have maybe 10 minutes before those things get hungry enough to come inside," she said. "I need everyone to move to the back wall of the laboratory." "Sergeant," said Dr. Kolthek, a crystalline researcher from the ethereal species, "even if you could clear the creatures from outside, we cannot fit through the maintenance passages you used to get here." Dayun smiled inside her helmet. "Who said anything about using the maintenance passages?" She began pulling equipment from her emergency pack. Standard rescue gear, modified by Engineer Choi's creative genius. Plasma cutters disguised as welding tools. Electromagnetic pulse generators that looked like communication equipment. And her personal favorite, shaped charges that were officially listed as emergency hull repair kits. "What are you doing out there?" asked Dr. Yilnis. "Improvising." Dayun. "Set the first shaped charge against the laboratory's outer wall, the one that faced away from the swarm creatures. When I tell you to, everyone needs to move to the emergency shelter in the corner. This is going to be loud." The explosion blew a hole through the laboratory's wall and into the corridor beyond. The void swarm creatures turned toward the noise, but they were on the wrong side of the laboratory to respond quickly. "Go, everyone through the hole now." The researchers moved faster than Dayun had expected. Fear, it seemed, was a universal motivator. But as the last person squeezed through the hole, the swarm creatures began breaking through the laboratory's main entrance. "This way," Dayun called, leading the group of refugees through corridors that were definitely not supposed to be used for evacuation. She had studied the station's layout during the 20-minute crawl through the plasma conduits. There was a route to the evacuation point, but it required going through sections of the station that were losing atmosphere and using emergency systems in ways their designers had never intended. "Sergeant," called Dr. Kolthek, "the corridor ahead has been breached. There is no atmosphere." "I know," Dayun replied, attaching emergency pressure bottles to the corridor's emergency supply system. "Everyone link up with the emergency air supply. We're going for a walk." What followed was a masterclass in human problem solving. Every obstacle that should have stopped them became just another puzzle to solve. When the normal evacuation route was blocked by swarm creatures, Dayun used the station's automated systems to create new routes. When sections of the station lost power, she jury-rigged emergency lighting using spare components from the researchers' own equipment. Most importantly, when the group's morale began to fail, when the alien researchers started talking about giving up and waiting for the military ships to save them, Dayun kept moving forward with a confidence that infected everyone around her. "How can you be so calm?" asked Dr. Yilnis as they climbed through a damaged section of the station's superstructure. "Because giving up is not an option," Dayun replied. "My job is to get you out of here alive, so that's what's going to happen." "But the odds are just numbers. People are what matter." Aboard the Harmony, Captain Lee Taemin was coordinating the evacuation while monitoring the Fist of Bruthen's engagement with the main swarm. Commander Krextor's destroyer was using standard Federation tactics, heavy weapons, frontal assault, overwhelming firepower. It wasn't working. "Captain," reported Dr. Park So-jin, "the Bruthen ship is taking heavy damage. The swarm is adapting to their weapons faster than expected." And Dayun, still moving toward the evacuation point with all 18 people, Taemin looked at the tactical display. The research station was falling apart. The Bruthen destroyer was losing its fight with the swarm, and his sergeant was leading a group of refugees through a collapsing structure while being hunted by creatures that ate metal. By any logical measure, this rescue operation should have been impossible. But logic, Taemin was beginning to realize, was not humanity's greatest strength. "Sir," came Dayun's voice over the communicator, "we're at evacuation point Delta. Ready for pickup." "How?" Taemin asked. "The sensors showed at least 50 swarm creatures between you and that location." "There were, sir, but I convinced them to go somewhere else." "How did you convince them?" Dayun's voice carried a smile. "I offered them a better deal. As the Harmony moved in to pick up the evacuees, Taemin could see what his sergeant had done. She had used the station's own emergency systems to create a feedback loop that made one section of the station emit massive amounts of energy, far more appealing to the void swarm than the small group of people trying to escape. The creatures had abandoned their hunt to feast on the energy source, giving the evacuation team the time they needed to reach safety. Sergeant Kim Da-eun came, Commander Krextor's voice over the communication system. "This is Commander Krextor. How did you accomplish this rescue?" The alarm that woke Captain Lee Taemin from his sleep was different from the usual ship alerts. This one carried the high-pitched urgency that meant someone was in serious trouble. "Captain to the bridge," came Sergeant Kim Da-eun's voice over the communication system. "We're receiving a Federation-wide distress signal." Taemin was on the bridge in less than 3 minutes, still pulling on his uniform jacket. The main display showed a star map with a flashing red dot at the edge of Vane. "Federation space, what's the situation?" he asked. Engineer Choi Woo-jin looked up from his station, his face tense. "It's the research station Deep Horizon. They're under attack by something called the Void Swarm." Dr. Park So-jin was already at her science station, pulling up data on the attacking force. According to the database, the Void Swarm is a space-based predator species. They consume energy and metal to reproduce. The good news is they're not intelligent. The bad news is they're incredibly adaptable and they multiply fast. "How many people are on Deep Horizon?" Taemin asked. 47 researchers from 6 different species, Da-eun replied. "Mixed teams studying star formation in that sector." The communication system crackled to life with Commander Krextor's voice. "All vessels in Sector 7, this is Commander Krextor aboard the destroyer Fist of Bruthen. We are responding to the Deep Horizon emergency. Cargo and auxiliary vessels will maintain safe distance while combat vessels handle the threat." Taemin looked at his crew. They were currently the closest Federation ship to Deep Horizon, but they were officially just a cargo vessel. According to Federation protocol, they should wait for the real military ships to handle the situation. "How long until Commander Krextor arrives?" Taemin asked. Choi checked his calculations. "At maximum speed, the Fist of Bruthen will reach Deep Horizon in 6 hours. "And how long do the people on that station have?" So-jin's expression was grim. "Based on the energy readings in the distress signal, maybe 2 hours before the station's shields fail completely." The bridge fell silent as everyone understood what that meant. By the time the Bruthen destroyer arrived, everyone on Deep Horizon would be dead. "Sir," Da-eun said quietly, "we could reach them in 90 minutes. We're a cargo ship, Sergeant. We're not equipped for this kind of fight." "Maybe not equipped the way the Federation would equip a ship," Choi said, "but we've made some modifications over the past few months." Taemin knew what Choi meant. During their cargo runs, the engineer had been quietly upgrading their systems with spare parts and creative solutions. Nothing that violated Federation regulations, but plenty that pushed the boundaries of what a cargo vessel could do. Another alarm sounded as they received an updated distress signal from Deep Horizon. This one included video. The main screen showed the interior of the research station. Chaos filled every corridor as researchers from multiple species tried to reach emergency shelters. Through the station windows, they could see the Void Swarm, thousands of dark, writhing creatures that looked like living shadows with too many teeth. "The swarm is adapting to our defensive systems," came the voice of Dr. Kelthera, the station commander. "They're learning to absorb our energy weapons and use them to reproduce faster. We estimate complete shield failure in 87 minutes. Taemin made his decision. "Choi, plot a course for Deep Horizon, maximum speed." "Sir," Da-eun said, "Commander Krextor specifically ordered us to maintain safe distance. Then it's a good thing our communication system has been having technical problems lately." Taemin activated the ship-wide intercom. "All crew, this is the captain. We're heading into a combat situation to rescue Federation citizens. This is not our assigned role, but it's the right thing to do. Anyone who objects can log it in their personal record." No one objected. As the Harmony jumped to hyperspace, Commander Krextor's angry voice followed them. Captain Lee returned to safe distance immediately. "You are not authorized for combat operations." Taemin switched off the communication system. "Sorry, Commander. Still having those technical difficulties." The 90-minute journey to Deep Horizon gave them time to prepare. Sojin studied everything the Federation database had on Void Swarm behavior. Choi worked on modifications that would give them an edge in combat. Dayun planned rescue scenarios for getting the researchers off the station. The Void Swarm operates like a plague, Sojin reported. They consume everything in an area and then move on to the next food source. The problem is they adapt incredibly fast. Whatever you use against them, they'll develop resistance to within minutes. So we can't rely on any single tactic, Taemin said. Exactly. We'll have to keep changing our approach. Choi looked up from his engineering console. I've been thinking about that. What if we don't try to fight them directly? What if we make them want to go somewhere else? Explain. The swarm wants energy and metal, right? What if we give them an easier target than the research station? Dayun caught on immediately. Use ourselves as bait. It's risky, Choi admitted. But it might work long enough to evacuate the station. When they dropped out of hyperspace at Deep Horizon, the situation was worse than the distress signals had indicated. The research station was completely surrounded by the Void Swarm. The creatures looked like a dark cloud of moving shadows, but sensors showed each individual was the size of a small ship. Station shields at 15%, Sojin reported. They don't have long. Through the chaos, they managed to establish communication with the station. Dr. Kelthera's voice came through, filled with static and desperation. Whoever this is, thank the stars you're here, but you need to stay back. These creatures will swarm your ship if you get too close. Dr. Kelthera, this is Captain Lee Taemin of the GFS Harmony. We're here to get you out. Captain Lee? But you're listed as a cargo vessel. You don't have the weapons to fight something like this. You're right, we don't, but we have something else. We have a plan. Taemin looked at his crew. Everyone ready? They nodded. Choi, begin Phase 1. Draw their attention. The Harmony moved toward the swarm, broadcasting energy signatures that made it look like a much larger and more appetizing target than the research station. The trick worked. Part of the swarm broke off from attacking Deep Horizon and turned toward them. Phase 2, Taemin ordered. Dayun launched a series of modified cargo containers toward the station. To outside observers, it looked like the Harmony was jettisoning cargo to make itself lighter and faster. In reality, each container held emergency supplies and transport equipment for the evacuation. Phase 3. Choi activated the ship's modified systems. Instead of trying to destroy the swarm creatures, he began broadcasting interference patterns that confused their senses. The creatures couldn't adapt to the interference because it wasn't an attack. It was just noise. Brilliant, Sojin whispered. They can adapt to weapons, but they can't adapt to random static. The confusion gave them the opening they needed. Da-Yun coordinated with the station to begin evacuating researchers through the cargo containers, which had docked with the station's emergency ports, but the swarm was learning. The creatures that had been drawn away from the station were starting to figure out that the Harmony wasn't actually a bigger threat than Deep Horizon. Some of them began turning back toward the station. Captain, came Dr. Kelthera's voice, we've evacuated 31 people, but we still have 16 trapped in the lower research levels. The swarm has broken through the outer hull near those sections. Taemin looked at the tactical display. The trapped researchers were in an area completely cut off from the main evacuation routes. Getting them out would require someone to go into the station while it was being overrun by creatures that ate metal and energy. I'll go, Dayun said without hesitation. Sergeant, that's suicide. The moment you enter the station, those creatures will sense you. Maybe, but I've been studying the station schematics. There might be a way to use their own systems against them. Before Taemin could object, Da-Un was already heading for the airlock. Keep those creatures busy, sir. I'll get our people out. Azzy? Dayun launched herself toward the station in a maintenance pod. Commander Krextor's destroyer finally arrived at the edge of the system. This is Commander Krextor. Captain Lee, withdraw immediately. The Fist of Bruthen will handle this situation. Taemin looked at the massive Bruthen ship on his sensors, then at the research station where his sergeant was risking her life to save trapped researchers. Negative, Commander. We have people in there. That was not a request, Captain. It was an order. Then you'll have to arrest me later, Commander. Right now I have a job to finish. As the Fist of Bruthen moved to engage the Void Swarm with standard Federation tactics, Taemin realized they were about to see something very important. The aliens were about to watch humans do what humans did best: refuse to give up when giving up made sense. On the station, Daun was about to show them what that really meant. 3 months had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Federation. Captain Lee Tae-min stared at his new assignment orders with barely controlled frustration. Another cargo run. Medical supplies to a mining colony in the Outer Rim. Not exploration. Not diplomacy. Not anything that used his years of military training and experience. "Sir, the cargo manifest is ready for your review," Engineer Choi Woo-jin said, sliding a datapad across the captain's desk. His voice carried the same frustration they all felt. Taemin looked at the manifest without really reading it. 40 tons of medical equipment, 15 tons of food supplies, and 30 tons of mining tools. "Tell me, Choi, when we trained for this mission back on Earth, did you ever imagine we'd become space truckers?" "No, sir, I didn't." Choi sat down across from his captain. "The Federation has 12 different species, and somehow we're the only ones qualified to deliver boxes." Dr. Park So-jin entered the captain's quarters, carrying her own datapad and wearing the expression she got when she was thinking hard about something. "Captain, I've been reviewing the Federation's species classification system. It's more complex than they told us." "How so?" Taemin asked, grateful for any distraction from the cargo manifest. "Each species is rated on dozens of different factors: physical strength, sensory capabilities, natural weapons, technological advancement, psychic abilities, longevity, environmental adaptation, but they don't rate problem-solving under stress, creativity, or determination. It's like those concepts don't exist in their evaluation system." Sergeant Kim Dae-yoon leaned against the doorframe. "Maybe those concepts don't matter to them. Every alien species we've met seems to do one thing really well. The Bruthens fight, the Ethereals think long-term, the Spectral Collective manipulates energy. They specialize. But humans don't specialize," Sojin continued. "We do whatever we have to do to survive. That's probably why they can't figure out where we fit." Taemin's communication console chimed with an incoming message. The holographic display showed Commander Krextor's reptilian face, looking even more unpleasant than usual. "Captain Lee, you will join Convoy Formation Beta 7 for transport to mining colony Kepler 442b. Your vessel will carry supplies while real ships provide escort protection." "Understood, Commander. The Harmony will take position in the convoy as ordered." Krextor's golden eyes narrowed. "See that you do. Pirates have been active in that sector. Stay in formation and do not attempt any heroics. Auxiliary vessels are not equipped for combat." The communication ended before Taemin could respond. Daun made a sound of disgust. "Not equipped for combat? Sir, we removed most of the Harmony's weapons to make room for cargo space, but that was Federation orders. This ship was built as a multi-role vessel." "The Federation doesn't want to know about our combat capabilities," Taemin said. "They've decided what we are, and they're not interested in evidence to the contrary." 2 days later, the convoy assembled at Jump Point Gamma, 12 ships total, including 3 Bruthen destroyers as escorts. The Harmony was grouped with 5 other cargo vessels, all carrying supplies for the outer colonies. As they prepared for the jump to hyperspace, Choi made an observation that had been bothering him. "Sir, have you noticed how predictable Federation military tactics are? Standard formations, standard procedures, everything by the book." "What do you mean?" Taemin asked. "I've been monitoring their communications during escort duties. Every situation gets the same response. Threat appears, they form up in attack pattern Delta or defensive formation Zeta. They never improvise." So-jin looked up from her research notes. "That makes sense given their psychology. Each species has evolved to be very good at specific things. They probably develop tactics that maximize their natural advantages and then stick with what works." "But what if what works stops working?" Daun asked. "What if they face something new?" Before anyone could answer, the convoy's alarm systems activated. The hyperspace jump had brought them to the edge of the Kepler system, but something was wrong. Emergency beacons were broadcasting from multiple locations. "This is Commander Krextor to all vessels. We have a situation. Pirates are attacking merchant ships throughout the system. All cargo vessels will maintain formation while escort ships investigate." Through the bridge windows, they could see flashes of weapons fire in the distance. Ships were under attack, and people needed help. "Captain," Choi said quietly, "our sensors show at least 6 merchant vessels under attack. The Bruthan escorts are moving to engage, but they can't cover all of them." Taemin studied the tactical display. The pirates were using hit-and-run tactics, striking isolated ships and then disappearing before the escorts could respond. Classic predator behavior. "Sir," Dayun said, "we could help. The Harmony still has defensive systems, and we know these shipping routes better than anyone after 3 months of cargo runs. The Federation has made it clear that we're not supposed to engage in combat," Taemin replied, but his voice suggested he was considering it anyway. "With respect, sir," Choi said, "the Federation has made a lot of things clear about what we can and can't do. But people are dying out there." Commander Krextor's voice crackled over the communication system. "Attention cargo vessels. Maintain formation and prepare for emergency jump to hyperspace. The escorts will handle this situation." Taemin watched as one of the Bruthan destroyers engaged a group of pirate ships. The destroyer was bigger and more heavily armed, but the pirates were faster and more maneuverable. They darted around the big ship like insects around a giant, stinging it with small weapons fire and staying out of range of its massive guns. "They're not adapting," Sojin observed. "The destroyer is using standard attack patterns, but the pirates are using mobility to counter them." "The Bruthans are used to fighting other Bruthans," Daon said. "Big ships, heavy armor, stand-up fights. These pirates fight like humans would." Another merchant ship's distress beacon went silent. Then another. Taemin made his decision. "Choi, take us out of formation. Dayun, bring our defensive systems online. So Jin, I need you to analyze the pirate attack patterns." "Sir?" Choi said with satisfaction. "Where are we going?" "To help. The Federation can court-martial me later if they want." "Captain Lee," Commander Krextor's angry voice filled the bridge. "Return to formation immediately. You are not authorized." For combat operations, Taemin switched off the communication system. "Sorry, Commander. I'm having technical difficulties with my radio." The Harmony broke away from the cargo convoy and headed toward the nearest group of ships under attack. As they approached, they could see 3 pirate vessels attacking a Federation medical ship. The medical ship had no weapons and was trying to run, but the pirates were faster. "Analysis complete," Sojin announced. "The pirates are using coordinated attacks. They position themselves so the target can't fire at one without exposing itself to the others. Classic pack hunting behavior." "How do we counter it?" Taemin asked. Dayun smiled grimly. "We don't play by their rules. Choi, can you make our ship look like it's disabled? I can shut down our main engines and drift toward them while keeping maneuvering thrusters online. They'll think we're a helpless cargo ship." "Perfect. So Jin, I need you to predict their approach pattern. Dayun, prepare our surprise." As the Harmony drifted toward the battle, appearing helpless, the pirates took the bait. 2 of them broke off from attacking the medical ship to investigate this new target. "They're approaching from starboard and port trying to bracket us," Sojin reported. "Let them get close," Taemin said calmly. The pirate ships moved in, confident they were attacking another defenseless merchant. At the last second, Taemin gave the order. "Now." Choi fired the maneuvering thrusters at full power, spinning the Harmony 90 degrees in less than 2 seconds. Dawan activated their defensive systems, which had been carefully concealed to look like cargo containers. High-intensity targeting lasers locked onto both pirate ships simultaneously. The pirates found themselves facing a ship that had just done something impossible by Federation standards. It had changed its nature in the middle of battle. "This is Captain Lee Taemin of the GFS Harmony to pirate vessels. Withdraw immediately or we will open fire." The pirates, confused and suddenly outgunned, broke off their attack and fled toward hyperspace. "Medical vessel, this is the Harmony. Are you damaged?" Harmony, this is Dr. Yilness of the medical ship Mercy. We have minor damage but no casualties. How did a cargo vessel drive off 3 pirate ships? Taman looked at his crew, all of whom were smiling for the first time in months. We improvised. They helped the medical ship reach safety. Commander Krextor's voice returned to their communication system, angrier than before. Captain Lee, return to convoy formation immediately. You will face disciplinary action for abandoning your assigned position. Understood, Commander. We're returning to formation now. As they rejoined the convoy, Daun asked, Sir, do you think we changed their minds about human capabilities? Taman looked at the tactical display, where Bruthan destroyers were still chasing pirates using the same predictable patterns that weren't working 3 hours ago. No, Daun. I don't think one small incident will change their minds. They've decided what we are, and they're not looking for evidence that contradicts their assumptions. But as the stars looked different from the bridge of the GFS Harmony. Captain Lee Tae-min stood before the large window, watching the massive space station grow larger as they approached. This was it. The moment humanity had waited for since they first looked up at the night sky and wondered if they were alone. Captain, we're receiving docking instructions from Nexus Prime, said Engineer Choi Woo-jin from his station. His fingers moved quickly over the controls, making small adjustments to their course. Thank you, Choi. Dr. Park, are you ready for this? Taemin asked, turning to look at the woman studying data tablets at the science station. Dr. Park, So-jin, looked up from her work. Her dark eyes showed both excitement and worry. As ready as anyone can be for meeting aliens for the first time. The data we have suggests there are at least 12 different species in the Galactic Federation. Each one is completely different from us. Sergeant Kim Da-yoon walked onto the bridge, her military uniform neat and clean. Sir, the diplomatic team is ready. Security protocols are in place, but honestly, we don't know what to expect. Taemin nodded. None of them really knew what to expect. Humanity had only made contact with the aliens 3 months ago when their scout ships found Earth. The aliens seemed friendly enough, inviting Earth to send representatives to join their federation. But friendly didn't mean they understood each other. The Harmony was humanity's best ship, built specifically for this mission. It carried the hopes of 8 billion people back on Earth. Taemin felt the weight of that responsibility every day since they left Earth orbit. Docking complete, Captain, Choi announced. The station is sending an escort to guide us to the meeting hall. Through the window, Taemin could see the escort approaching. It wasn't a normal ship like theirs. This one seemed to be made of crystal that glowed with soft blue light. It moved without any visible engines, floating smoothly through space like it was swimming through water. That must be one of the ethereal ships, So-jin said, checking her notes. They're made of living crystal according to the preliminary data we received. The escort led them through the massive station. Nexus Prime was bigger than any city on Earth. Thousands of ships from different worlds were docked at its ports. Some ships looked like metal whales, others like geometric puzzles, of light and shadow. Humanity's ship looked plain and simple next to them. They docked at a port designed for their type of ship. As they prepared to leave the Harmony, Taemin gathered his team in the airlock. Remember, we're representing all of humanity today. We don't know how they'll judge us, but we need to show them who we really are. We're not the strongest or the fastest, but we're survivors. We adapt. We find solutions. The airlock opened to reveal a corridor that seemed to stretch forever. The walls were made of some material that shifted colors as they walked. Soft music played from nowhere and everywhere. The artificial gravity felt slightly lighter than Earth normal. Their guide was waiting for them. Ambassador Velthara was tall and thin, made of what looked like living crystal. Light moved through her body, in slow waves, and when she spoke, her voice sounded like wind chimes. Welcome to Nexus Prime, representatives of Earth. I am Ambassador Velthara of the Ethereal Council. We have prepared a meeting space where you can meet the other Federation members. As they walked through the station, humans and aliens stopped to stare at each other. Taemin noticed how the aliens looked at them. Their expressions were hard to read, but he got the feeling they weren't impressed. The meeting hall was enormous. Representatives from 12 different alien species sat around a curved table. Each species looked completely different from the others. Some were huge, like the reptilian Bruthans, who were twice as tall as humans and covered in thick scales. Others were small and insect-like, with multiple arms and compound eyes. "Please take your seats," Velthara said, guiding them to chairs that seemed too small for some species and too large for others. Commander Krextor of the Bruthan Empire spoke first. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. "So these are the humans. They look even weaker than the report suggested." Taemin felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his expression calm. Sojin placed a gentle hand on his arm, reminding him to stay diplomatic. A floating ball of energy that introduced itself as Scout Zindal began scanning them with beams of light. "Fascinating. Their physical capabilities are below average for most Federation species. Limited strength, average speed, no natural weapons or armor. Their senses appear to be quite restricted compared to ours." High Arbiter Kolnash, who looked like a giant praying mantis made of black metal, clicked her mandibles together. "What exactly can your species contribute to the Federation? Most member worlds specialize in something. The Bruthans are our finest warriors. The Ethereals provide wisdom and long-term planning. The Spectral Collective offers energy manipulation and advanced technology." Sojin stood up slowly. "Honored representatives, humans may not have the natural advantages of your species, but we have something else. We adapt. When faced with problems, we find new solutions. When our environment changes, we change with it. We've survived ice ages, natural disasters, and wars by learning to work together and think creatively." Commander Krextor let out a sound that might have been laughter. "Adaptation, creativity, these are not strengths. They are what weak species use when they lack real power. In battle, adaptation means nothing. Only strength matters." "With respect, Commander," Taemin said, standing beside Sojin, "we've had many battles on our world. We've learned that the strongest doesn't always win. Sometimes the smartest does. Sometimes the one who refuses to give up does." The aliens exchanged looks. Some seemed amused, others appeared skeptical. Velthara's light patterns shifted to what Sojin hoped was a thoughtful configuration. "Your species shows promise for certain auxiliary roles. Research support, perhaps. Manual labor where your small size might be useful. Diplomatic missions to worlds deemed too dangerous for more valuable species." The words hit like a slap. Auxiliary roles, too dangerous for more valuable species. Taemin felt his team's anger, but he kept his voice steady. "We appreciate any opportunity to contribute to the Federation's goals." Scout Zindal pulsed brighter. "Our scans confirm the initial assessment. Humans show no unusual capabilities. Beyond basic intelligence, they will be classified as Tier 4 auxiliary species. This grants them limited membership privileges and access to basic Federation resources." High Arbiter Kolnash made a note on a device that appeared in her clawed hands. "The classification will be reviewed in 5 standard years. If humans prove useful in their assigned roles, they may qualify for upgraded status." The meeting continued for several hours, covering trade agreements, communication protocols, and assignment procedures. Throughout it all, Taemin noticed how the aliens talked about humans like they were discussing a useful tool, rather than intelligent beings. As they prepared to leave, Commander Krextor approached Taemin. The huge reptilian looked down at the human captain with golden eyes that showed no warmth. "Captain Lee Taemin, your species has been assigned to support roles because that is where you belong. Do not mistake our generosity for weakness. The Federation has rules. Auxiliary species do not command real ships or lead important missions. They follow orders from their betters." Taemin looked up at the commander without backing down. "We understand our assigned role, Commander. We'll do our best to prove ourselves worthy of the Federation's trust." Krextor's mouth opened slightly, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Prove yourselves? You misunderstand. This is not a test you can pass. This is simply your place in the natural order." As they walked back to their ship, Daun spoke quietly. "Sir, did you hear how they talked about us? Like we're pets they're doing a favor." "I heard. Taemin replied. But we're here now. We have our foot in the door. What we do next will determine how humanity's future unfolds. Choi looked back at the massive station. They think they know what we're capable of based on a few scans and measurements. They have no idea what humans can really do when we need to. So Jin was already making notes on her tablet. They measure everything by physical capability and specialized advantages. They don't understand that our greatest strength isn't what we are, but what we can become when we have to. As the Harmony undocked from Nexus Prime and began its journey to humanity's first Federation assignment, none of them knew that their chance to show what humans really were would come sooner than they imagined. The aliens thought they had measured humanity and found them wanting. They were wrong. The meeting hall on Nexus Prime looked exactly the same as it had 6 months ago, but everything else had changed. The same alien representatives sat around the curved table, but their expressions were different now. Where before, there had been dismissive curiosity, now there was something approaching respect. Captain Lee Taemin entered with his crew, but this time they weren't the only humans in the room. Word of the Deep Horizon rescue had spread throughout the Federation, and now human representatives from Earth were joining the discussion about humanity's place in the galaxy. Ambassador Velthara's crystalline form pulsed with patterns that Dr. Park Sojin had learned to recognize as deep thought. Captain Lee, Sergeant Kim, Dr. Park, Engineer Choi, please take your seats. We have much to discuss. Commander Krextor stood as they entered, a gesture of respect that would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. The massive Bruthan warrior had spent the weeks since Deep Horizon studying human tactics and psychology, trying to understand how a species he had dismissed as weak could accomplish things his own people considered impossible. Before we begin the formal proceedings, Krextor said, his voice carrying none of its previous arrogance, I wish to address something. 6 months ago, I told Captain Lee that his species had been assigned to auxiliary roles because that was their place in the natural order. I was wrong. High Arbiter Kolnash clicked her mandibles in what Sojin recognized as the insectoid species version of agreement. The Federation's classification system has served us well for thousands of years, but it failed to account for capabilities we did not know existed. Scout Zindal, the energy being who had first scanned the humans, pulsed with colors that indicated embarrassment. My initial assessment focused on measurable physical and technological capabilities. I did not scan for adaptability, creativity under pressure, or psychological resilience. These concepts were not part of our evaluation framework. Velthara gestured toward a holographic display that showed the Federation's species classification chart. We have spent considerable time reviewing this system. It categorizes species based on their greatest strengths, the Bruthan Empire's physical prowess, the Ethereal Council's long-term thinking, the Spectral Collective's energy manipulation. But humans appear to have no single greatest strength. That's because our greatest strength is not having a greatest strength, Captain Taemin said. We adapt. We become whatever the situation requires us to become. Dr. Yilnis, one of the researchers rescued from Deep Horizon, spoke from her position at the witness table. The human sergeant who saved us demonstrated capabilities that our psychology texts say should not exist in the same individual. Strategic thinking, technical improvisation, physical courage, emotional resilience, and tactical creativity. No, single species should be able to combine all of these effectively. But humans do combine them, said Dr. Kolthek, the ethereal researcher who had also been rescued. They do not specialize in any one area, so they can excel in whatever area the situation demands. Sergeant Kim Da-yoon, still recovering from her radiation exposure but insisting on attending the meeting, spoke quietly. Respectfully, we don't excel at everything. We just refuse to give up when things get difficult. Sometimes that's enough. Commander Krextor made a sound that might have been laughter. Sometimes. Sergeant, your species has redefined what we consider possible. The rescue at Deep Horizon required capabilities from multiple Federation specialties. No single species should have been able to coordinate such an operation. That's because we're not a single specialty, Engineer Choi said. Every human is a little bit warrior, A little bit scientist, a little bit engineer, a little bit diplomat. We have to be because we evolved on a world that kept changing the rules. Ambassador Velthara's light pattern shifted to what Sojin recognized as curiosity. Explain this concept of changing rules. Dr. Sojin stood to address the assembly. Earth has experienced multiple extinction events, ice ages, continental shifts, and climate changes. Species that specialized too heavily in one environment died out when the environment changed. Humans survived by being adaptable rather than optimal. You evolved to be generalists in a universe of specialists, Velthara observed. More than that, Taemin said. We evolved to see problems as puzzles to solve rather than obstacles to accept. When the Void Swarm adapted to Federation weapons, your response was to use bigger weapons. Our response was to stop using weapons entirely and find something they couldn't adapt to. High Arbiter Kolnash accessed her data files. The psychological profiles we compiled after Deep Horizon are unprecedented. The human crew showed stress responses that should have caused cognitive breakdown, but instead triggered enhanced performance. This contradicts our understanding of how minds work under pressure. Our minds work differently under pressure, Dion explained. Stress doesn't shut us down. It makes us more creative. We solve our best problems when we have to. Scout Zindal pulsed with patterns indicating deep analysis. This suggests that our entire approach to crisis management may be flawed. We focus on preventing stress and maintaining optimal conditions. Humans appear to use stress as a tool for enhanced problem solving. Not just stress, Choi added. Humans work best when the stakes are highest. Tell us someone's life is in danger and we'll find a way to save them that didn't exist 5 minutes earlier. Commander Krextor looked directly at Captain Taemin. 6 months ago, I asked what your species could contribute to the Federation. Now I understand the question was wrong. The question should have been, what can the Federation learn from your species? The room fell silent as the implications of that statement settled in. Velthara was the first to speak. The Federation Council has spent considerable time discussing this question. We have reached several conclusions. A new holographic display appeared showing revised classification charts. First, we are creating a new species classification, Adaptive Apex. This category recognizes civilizations whose strength lies not in specialized capabilities, but in their ability to transcend limitations through creativity and determination. Second, High Arbiter Kjolnash continued, we are restructuring Federation crisis response protocols. Instead of sending specialized ships to handle specific threat types, we will now include adaptive species in all major operations. Third, Scout Zindal added, we are establishing joint training programs. Federation specialists will learn human problem-solving techniques, while humans will gain access to our advanced technologies and knowledge bases. Captain Taemin looked at his crew, seeing the same mix of satisfaction and apprehension in their faces that he felt. These are significant changes. What exactly are you asking of humanity? Commander Krextor stepped forward. Captain, I am asking if you would accept command of the Federation exploration vessel Unity. It would be the first joint human-alien crew, with specialists from 6 different worlds working together under human adaptive leadership. The offer was everything humanity had hoped for when they first made contact with the Federation. Full partnership, not auxiliary status. Command positions, not support roles. Recognition as equals, not toleration as inferiors. But Taemin understood the real meaning behind the offer. The aliens weren't just offering humanity a place in the Federation. They were asking humans to help them become something better than they were. We accept, he said, but with one condition. Name it. Velthara said, no more classifications based on what species can't do. From now on, we judge everyone by what they can become when they have to. High Arbiter Kolnash made a note in her files. Agreed. The Unity will operate under human command philosophy, empowering individuals to make independent decisions while maintaining strategic coordination. As the meeting concluded and the various representatives prepared to leave, Commander Krextor approached Sergeant Daun one final time. Sergeant, I have one last question. When you were dying from radiation poisoning in that station corridor, what made you keep going? What made you refuse to give up when any logical being would have accepted defeat? Daon thought for a moment before answering. Sir, I kept going because giving up would have meant admitting that some problems can't be solved. And if some problems can't be solved, then some people can't be saved. I don't live in a universe where that's true. And if you had died in that corridor, then I would have died proving that at least one person refused to accept that universe. Krextor nodded slowly. I understand now why your species has survived so much, and why they will continue to survive whatever comes next. 6 weeks later, the Federation exploration vessel Unity departed from Nexus Prime on its first mission. Captain Lee Taman commanded a crew that included humans, Bruthans, Ethereals, Spectral Collective members, and representatives from 4 other species. Their mission was to investigate an ancient artifact that had resisted analysis by Federation scientists for over a century. Previous expeditions had failed because the artifact seemed to change its properties whenever anyone tried to study it. Captain, said Lieutenant Velkara, the ethereal science officer, the artifact is exhibiting the same behavior as before. It appears to be adapting to our sensor scans. Interesting, Taemin replied. It's adapting to us the same way the Void Swarm